Good evening. This is going into week 5 of English 122. This particular video is going to be addressing the critical analysis, rhetorical analysis assignment. It's assignment 1C. It's the last of the big writing assignments within module 1. And it also is for worksheet 2, which is the template that you can use for your critical analysis, rhetorical analysis essay. I wanted to compliment you. The 1A and 1B assignments have been highly successful. You've done wonderful jobs. You've done great work with your thesis, your structure of your essays. You've gotten those down pat. You've gotten the concept of how to thread from one idea to the next to build up to the so what. You've asked some great questions in your emails. I'm happy to answer any emails. Please let me know if you have any questions or need anything clarified. Some folks have touched base to say they didn't understand a term. That is not a problem. Just ask me, and you won't be held accountable for information you don't have. And I know that our textbook is thin, and if there is any gaps in the information and you need further time to complete assignment because you don't understand the information, touch base with me, and that should not be a problem at all. But we'll work together, make sure that you get all the information you need so that you can do the best work available. So English 122 is building up towards the research project, which is the extended research argument. That will be modules 2, 3, and 4 of the writing. Module 1 was recursive. It's remembering skills that you had from 121, or if you did not take 121, it's getting you back in the mode of thinking critically and writing as an argumentative writer. So building the skills of reading and writing towards the researched argument. This assignment 1C is the last component part. You may have done a critical analysis or a rhetorical analysis in 121. Oftentimes 121 at Pikes Peak uses the letter from Birmingham Jail as the source text for that assignment. You are welcome to use that text. We have it up under the supplemental readings. It's in the link. It's a linked text. You're welcome to use that text. You're welcome to use the Morgan Spurlock's text. We worked with that in the discussion post. The discussion posts have been fantastic. I really love the discussion threads. You're coming up with wonderful ideas. You're supportive. You're collaborative. I really love the engagement that you're putting into your posts and your responses. They're fantastic. Keep that up. Another text choice for the critical analysis, rhetorical analysis paper will be Annie Lamont's Shitty First Drafts. If you'd like to work on that piece, that link is up. We didn't do a lot with it. It was posted for the readings for this week. What I put it on there for is to show you that all authors struggle with writing, and she's talking about the need to revise. I cannot stress, if you don't have time to edit your paper, editing, looking for punctuation, grammar, spelling, if you can revise with an eye towards your thesis. Discussion posts have nailed that. The problem with writing is that darn thesis, trying to figure out how it can be strong, how it can encompass all that you've argued. Some of you have put some great suggestions in there about how you write backwards, where you write the paper first and then you go back and fill out your thesis more fully. So you put a working thesis or a placeholder thesis, and then you come back and revise that thesis at the end to encompass what you've already argued. That's a great strategy. Some of you say that you just free write for 10 minutes so you can contain your thoughts, and then from that free writing you evolve a working thesis. That's another strategy you use. Those are great ideas, and keep those kind of suggestions, collaboration going so that you can really share some things that work well for you. Somebody might be struggling with something and they just can't push past it. Our textbook is so thin, it doesn't really give you much information about how to do that, but that discussion post community is really important, and you can get some really good information from it. So critical rhetorical analysis this week, it's looking for a 3 to 5 page response. If you can go longer than 5, that's great. If you don't get to 3, that's no problem, as long as you cover the elements I'm looking for. I'm looking for that thesis and the so what, bookending your argument. I'm looking for a title. Please put a title on your page, put a works cited, especially because you'll be working with a text. So a critical analysis argument is an argument about somebody else's argument. So you're analyzing a text at hand. What you're looking for is whether the author was effective or ineffective or some degree in between in creating a structure, supporting the argument. Is it logical, illogical? Is the thesis great, but the so what's gone? If the title is bare, if the claims and evidence don't align at all with the thesis, if the claims and evidence are fantastic, but the thesis points are just not there to argue it out. The things that we're looking for in our own writing, that's what you're assessing somebody else's work on. You're looking for effectiveness, for critical analysis. Rhetorical analysis is a kind of critical analysis. You're going to be looking at persuasiveness. Rhetoric is the art of persuasion, and so when someone is putting together rhetorical strategies in trying to argue something out, they are specifically targeting appeals to emotion, logic, and ethics, pathos, ethos, and logos, and they're specifically using devices to decorate that appeal so that they will persuade their reader. So you have to know your reader, your audience. Back in the day in Greek and Roman times, when rhetoric was the art of persuasion in the verbal form, oral debate, before texts were written down to be read and pondered, you scored points based on how you performed the rhetorical performance, trying to persuade your audience to believe your side in a debate is part of the tradition of oratory. Because we're not doing that in modern writing, what you're looking for in some texts, and specifically we saw this in King's text, Letter from Birmingham Jail, he relies on classic rhetorical strategies to try to make his audience be persuaded to join his nonviolent direct action campaign in the civil rights movement, trying to break down segregation in the South, especially in Atlanta. He is from Atlanta. He goes to Alabama because he's invited there to speak, and then he gets jailed for some of the strategies, nonviolent direct action campaigns. While he's in jail, he writes to his fellow clergymen. The letter is, "My dear fellow clergymen," is the opening. He targets his audience, specifically, "My dear fellow clergymen." He uses a lot of allusions, biblical allusions. He uses a metaphor where he compares himself to St. Paul, who is an epistle writer in the Bible. He's the letter writer, he spreads the gospel. King says this over and over in this letter from Birmingham Jail. So he's making allusions that he knows his audience knows or should know. And if they don't know, then they're not very effective clergy themselves. They're not very, very authoritative clergy. So the brilliance of that letter from Birmingham Jail is not to just say, this is my message to this target audience. He's using rhetorical, classic rhetoric, rhetorical appeals, situational awareness, kairos, the time here now. He talks about that. He talks about time. In the very opening, I'm being charged with being untimely and unwise. I'm going to respond to you that I am timely and wise. And one of the ways he does that is through situational awareness, through kairos. He decorates language all over the place, metaphors, allusions, alliteration. He uses chiasmus, which is a crisscross structure you see in some of the Old English poetry. He uses metaphors that are so brilliant they blind you. He uses imagery where he's talking about the little mental sky that his daughter is developing, the clouds forming in her little mental sky. That's such a heartbreaking image, and he just hones it over and over and over in that one long section, a long paragraph where it's a pathetic appeal, a pathetic appeal, a pathetic appeal, to the point it's saturating. Repetitions, balance, you say the classic if-then construction. If you say but for A, B, this, where he says the example, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That's classical balance. Those are the kinds of things you can analyze, and you're certainly free to use that letter from Birmingham Jail as a text. If you've used it for a paper before, there's no reason to throw out that work. Use it again. Hone it for this class. If you want to work on Morgan Spurlock's piece and do a combination of his pathetic appeals and the way he structures where his thesis is. Some of you pointed out that he doesn't put his thesis in to the very end, so his thesis is almost his so what. It's a very oddly structured argument. So you can combine and say it's effective in some modes, it's ineffectively structured, but his appeals to pathos are highly successful. So in combination, his argument is persuasive, and portions of it are highly effective and portions of it are ineffective, and these are the reasons why. So you structure your argument based on that kind of mode of looking at, analyzing how somebody is either structuring or proving for the critical analysis, or how they're persuading or not persuading using the rhetorical structures. So the choices of text you can use Annie Lamont's shitty first drafts, you can use Morgan Spurlock's Do You Want Lies with That, you can use King's Letter from Birmingham Jail. If those three texts don't appeal to you, you're certainly welcome to use some others. I've put up under the tab of supplemental readings at the very bottom, there's a little separate folder that says critical/rhetorical analysis essay, additional text links. So I put up some other things. One of the things I love to do for a critical analysis is I look at poetry. Poets are brilliant because they're already using those kind of rhetorical devices or decorative language that we see in writing. So poetry, the repetitions, the rhyme, the meter. If a poet breaks rhythm, the metrical beats are misaligned for some reason. What are they saying with that? It's usually not unintentional. No one is a sloppy enough writer to say, whoops, I made a mistake with that. They usually do it for a reason. You want to think about that. So I put up two texts that I find to be very interesting poems, and of course feel free to use another text if you are in doubt about it. Touch base with me. I'm happy to go over some ideas, saying this text might be too large to work with, but you can look at this portion of it, or hey, that's a great text. Texts are anything, so anything that conveys meaning, that holds a message or meaning, an argument. So you can look at film, you can look at a song, you can look at song lyrics, you can look at a video, you can look at documentaries. Anything that conveys a message is a text. So you're certainly welcome to critically analyze any of those things. And I love when you do that. If you want to look at, I've had some great papers in the past where they're looking at the structure of how the introduction to the Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson, and the director is considered the author of a film. So Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, in the Fellowship of the Ring, how the intro sequence is highly effective at anticipating the so what at the end, and what the argument was about is how Peter Jackson visually creates a power void in the very beginning images, and then at the end of the big battle with Sauron at the end, there are those voids that are echo statements. So he's looking at, this student did a great job of looking at scenes from the very first one and the very last film. Didn't have to talk about all three films, but just pick and chose different elements that work together to make his argument. It was a really highly effective argument. So that's something that you're welcome to do. I put John Lennon's Imagine lyrics. The reason I put that in there is because it's a really interesting set of lyrics if you really spend time looking at what those lyrics say versus who John Lennon is. You have an argument that pushes against context and time, so you can really look at Kairos. Back when he wrote these lyrics, was that an applicable time where it doesn't continue back into the 2019? Or is 2019, the text is even more effective now? So you want to think about that, or you want to put that in conversation, start working on a synthesis, looking at the video, the video that John Lennon and Yoko Ono created for him performing that song, at the same time reading the lyrics. Are there places where there's a disconnect between what's being performed and shown visually versus what is being said or sung So those are things you can look at. I particularly love this text. It's called Nicholas Carr is Google Making Us Stupid. You may have read that in 121. It's a really great piece about technology, and I know some of you wrote about technology in your basic argument. If you're very interested in things about modern technology and cell phone technology, new visions of security, some wrote about cybersecurity, that kind of thing. Nicholas Carr, this piece is about 20 years old. And it's really interesting the way he structures his argument. So looking for those kind of things, is he making a logical appeal, an ethical appeal? Is he doing an effective job structuring his argument? He tells you his thesis right off the bat, very different from Spurlock. I have Gwendolyn Brooks. She's an African-American poet from the 1940s to 50s, thereabouts, writing in Chicago. She wrote a very small poem. It's really tiny. It's only 8 lines long. It's called We Real Cool. It's very, very condensed, but there's a lot of interesting tension in that poem. Look at the structure, look at the form, look at the choices, look at what's there, look at what's not there. Thinking about those kind of things, those are ways to approach that text. Christina Rossetti is a Victorian female poet in Victorian England, writing a poem called Goblin Market. It's about the dangers of don't go into the forest. You guys should know this. Don't go into the forest. Don't go into the forest because bad things lie. Fairies lie in the forest. Goblins lie in the forest. Don't eat anything that a goblin gives you because it's a bad thing. So, of course, the girls go into the forest, and what do? One of them eats something that the goblin gives her. But what I want you to see in that goblet market, talk about repetitions and layering. It's called conjuring when you heap things on like a big pile. The listing of fruits, saturating the text, saturating the senses. What is the point of that? Is it an effective strategy of layering on? Is that in itself a caution? Or is that more of an enticement? Is there something talking against the text? My favorite one of all these texts is Dr. Seuss's The Sneetches, and I've touched base with some of you about if you just finding some of these texts just dull and like I don't really know what to do with Nicholas Carr. It's another academic kind of essay, but I want something more playful. Children's literature is ripe for the picking for rhetorical analysis, especially Dr. Seuss's The Sneetches. So look at his appeals to pathos, to logos, to ethos. Look at his structure because Dr. Seuss, right? He's about rhyme and meter and learning how to read, and he plays with language, he plays with images, he plays with metaphors, he does all those kind of things. Is he persuasive? Well, how do you know? If you're a kid, yeah, I love that book. But if you're an adult, if adult is the audience, is he persuading you to avoid, like Sylvester McBean drives up in a machine to sell you something? Is it a caution against consumerism again? And then thinking ahead to our next couple of modules about synthesis, and I'll be posting a lecture on synthesis also. Looking ahead, can you put Seuss's text in conversation with maybe Spurlock's about consumption, maybe about Christina Rossetti's Goblin Market? So thinking about how these texts work together. We'll go into that for the next 3 modules, but tonight I wanted you to make sure you understood for the critical analytic essay, you can choose to mix and match, whether you want to do just pure rhetoric or if you want to do pure critical analysis, if you want to do a combination of both, free to do so. So I wanted to highlight to you to mention that the worksheet is designed to be a template for your writing. Some of you misunderstood, and I'm certainly not the clearest person, as you probably have figured out. So worksheet 1 was to be the template for writing out your ideas for basic argument. So you can move from the template. Okay, I've got the title, I'm going to put it on my paper. Helping you get the thinking to break down those elements. You can do a separate text between worksheet 2 and your paper. I'm not going to hold you to, oh, you wrote on this on your worksheet, you didn't write it on your paper. I'm not going to hold you to that. But it's designed, the worksheets are designed to help you as a template for writing. So 3 to 4 pages, 5 pages if you can do. Less than 3, probably you won't get all the arguing done that you need to in the space. Looking for type double space, you guys have all that down pat. I'm looking for making sure that you have an eye where you don't, and this is hugely important, don't engage with the argument. Don't agree with or disagree with the argument the author's making. You are only analyzing how they are making that argument, not what they are saying. It's irrelevant what their argument is in terms of whether you agree with it or not. It doesn't matter. How effective are they at constructing and presenting that argument to you? Again, you're free to write any of those texts. Make sure you have an intro, conclusion paragraph, your body paragraphs, look for your transitions, make sure they're linking the things that we've been talking about. Make sure you have a title. Your title serves as a hook. Don't just put, critical analysis, because that's a snooze fest and your reader doesn't read me. If you're competing for my attention, read me, come up with something fun like Morgan's Prologues. Do you want lies with that? Oh yeah, I want to read that. That's fun. That's playful. Something if he just came around saying, Americans are over consumers. Okay. Playfulness. Try to integrate that in. Or if it's really serious, make it really serious. Catch my attention. The other thing is make sure you use citations. So you should know MLA citations. If you don't, look at Purdue's OWL website. We also have links underneath our textbook reading materials. Touch base with me if you need any kind of clarification, but I'm looking for MLA documentation, which is the in-text citation, last name, comma, page number, or in poetry, it's poem name or last name, and then line number of the poem. If you have any questions, just touch base. And then I want to make sure you have a works cited page, because that's part of MLA formatting. So the works cited page is at the end. Author listed alphabetically by last name, double spaced, and you'll see how that's done on the L Purdue website. If you have any questions, touch base with me and keep up the great work. You guys are pretty remarkable, to be honest, but I sure appreciate it. I love reading your work. I'm looking forward to reading all of your continued work, and please let me know if you have any questions.